Welcome to the Project Censored Show on Pacifica Radio. I'm your host, Mickey Huff. Today's program, it is the annual Banned Books Week special. And people that have been listening to the show, especially in the last couple years, know that I've been doing several programs a year on challenges and bans and book censorship because there have been record levels of challenges. And this year, we're seeing a similar trend continue. We are honored right now as our first guest today. We're delighted to welcome Cindy Hohl, Director of Policy Analysis and Operational Support at Kansas City Public Library, also the President of the American Library Association. And just a little bit more about our guest. Cindy's the past president of American Indian Library Association and an active member of other ALA affiliates, including Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, Black Caucus of ALA, Chinese American Librarians Association, and Reforma, the National Association to Promote Library and Information Services to Latinos and the Spanish speaking. So, Cindy Hohl, again, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule, especially around Banned Books Week. So, I know that you all have a new study, you have updates about what's happening. Tell us, what is the state of our right to read in the United States today? Cindy Hohl.
Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate the question, and absolutely, we're always here to help everyone celebrate their right to read in America. So when we're looking at the recent data, there's some good news to be encouraged about. When we look at January 1st to August 31st of 2024, our ALA Office of Intellectual Freedom tracked 414 challenges to censor library materials and services. In those cases, 1,128 unique titles were challenged. So while it's unfortunate to hear that we would ever have any challenges, what the good news is that that is a decrease from the year before, when there were 695 cases tracked within the same reporting period. So as we continue to look at the trends and see how the community is responding to their library collection, it's interesting to see that perhaps the past attempts to censor books have started to move in a new direction.
Well, that's welcome news, albeit still incredibly alarming numbers, particularly looking back since 2020. There's been a rather extraordinary escalation in attempts to ban this. And just very briefly, since I do a show on this every year, but I'd like to have you perhaps explain to people the history of Banned Books Week, going back to 1982 on the heels of the Pico case. Perhaps you just talk a little bit about why we have Banned Books Week. I mean, some folks, just like when they ask Project Censored, they're like, wait, are you in favor of censorship? And we're like, my goodness, of course not. When people look at Banned Books Week, sometimes they don't realize it's a celebration of the right to read. It's raising awareness that there are always challenges around the corner where people somewhere or groups somewhere are trying to restrict access to information, especially in our public schools. Cindy Hohl.
Right. So as you said, Banned Book Week has been observed for more than 40 years now. And this is an opportunity for us to bring awareness to the attempts to remove books and materials from libraries, schools, and bookstores. And as we continue to move down this pathway of responding to those challenges and attempts, we want to make sure that the message that gets out is that we are encouraging everyone to recognize their freedoms, to celebrate their right to read in America. You know, the First Amendment is for everyone. And so it's very important that we continue to share these messages. And while it's unfortunate we have to have a Banned Book Week, it's something where we will continue to support our readers, because that is the role of the American Library Association. We are here to support library workers, library staff, readers, and ultimately increase the value of literacy in America. So as we celebrate this year, our theme is going to be Freed Between the Lines. And it's an observance of the freedom we find in the pages of books and the need to defend that freedom from censorship. Librarians didn't go into this work to be on the front lines defending democracy, but we're here for it, Mickey. We're going to continue to make sure that everyone has equal opportunities to access information.
Well, Cindy, you said it about right there. You are on the front line, and we're in solidarity with you as part of the Banned Weeks Coalition, Banned Books Week Coalition. We're also part of the National Coalition Against Censorship. Project Censored, of course, has been fighting against censorship in the news media since 1976. You really are on the front lines, and people need to realize the service that librarians, what they contribute to society, public libraries, and especially again in our schools. And Cindy, I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about part of the troubling trend beyond the fact that there has been this record uptick in books. And you just said this year, so far, the numbers have been down from last year, which was a record year, I believe. But it is fall, school's back in session, it's an election year. I don't want to be cynical, but I do know that the censors are out there and people get animated in election years. Can you talk about the kinds of books that are most likely to be targeted? It looks about, according to United Against Book Bans, about half the books that are targeted are titles that represent voices and lived experiences of LGBTQIA plus and BIPOC individuals. Cindy, can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. We continue to see year over year trends, similar titles that are being added to the list. So when titles are identified where the content is being reported as inappropriate for certain audiences, oftentimes the reporter hasn't even read the book in its entirety, and we'll hear that only
Uh,
snippets are taken out of context. And so when you look at the storyline, and it is about someone's experience in life, either as a Black Indigenous person of color or on the LGBTQIA community, why is it that we continue to see these challenges come up specifically for those storylines? That's very problematic because, in essence, what we're hearing is that individuals are being dehumanized through that process. What we're hearing is that only certain voices are allowed in society and others should be silenced. When we exclude anyone from our community, that is not a step toward democracy. That is not a step toward supporting everyone's First Amendment rights. And when we continue to oppress anyone in our community, that isn't a healthy environment for anyone. And we really need to get to the bottom of this, especially in schools, where we have curriculum in place to support learners, where we have trained professionals, often with a Master of Library and Information Science degree. Depending on the state, they may even have a teaching certificate on top of that or a dual degree. There are so many opportunities for us to support our community in the best way. And I don't believe oppressing voices will get us there.
Yeah, absolutely not, Cindy Hohl. Just a reminder, we're speaking with the president of the American Library Association, Cindy Hohl. We're talking about the American Library Association's update on the most challenged books of the year so far, with a report from the ALA on the trends in book censorship. And Cindy, I wanted to just come back a minute to these challenges in schools went beyond just people. They went beyond individuals wanting a certain book off the shelf. Somewhere around 90% of the book banning efforts last year involved multiple title challenges where people or groups like Moms for Liberty in Florida and elsewhere sort of astroturfed across the country, and they would generate these massive lists basically to take books off the shelves. And of course, in looking at a place like Florida, Moms for Liberty, founded there in 2021, home of the so-called Don't Say Gay law. These were right-wing reactions to, what they saw as wokeness as being a bad thing, or DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion policies. And they also, in addition to the multiple title challenges, they started going after school board seats across the country to try to unseat people to have stealth candidates that would work to censor books. Cindy Hall.
Yes, we have seen that activity. And as groups want to mobilize and create distractions in their community, it's very important that we lean on our libraries to help us identify accurate information from credible sources. When you see misinformation being spread, it's an opportunity for you to really pay close attention. Why is it only certain voices are being elevated? Why is it only certain groups are looking to create this division among their neighbors? That is essentially what we're talking about. And as we are all informed readers, we should be here talking about the beauty of literacy, celebrating readership, encouraging people to read. That is the basis of a healthy foundation for any community. And instead, we're hearing that continued attempts at oppression are moving across the country, that we have certain individuals who feel that they know what's best for their neighbor. And we can really only make those decisions for ourselves and our families. So as we continue to respond to these challenges, we're going to do our best to help people access that accurate information. And we encourage people to join us through our Unite Against Book Bans campaign. And that website, uniteagainstbookbans.org, is available to anyone. We encourage members of the community to visit that website and to join us in this national advocacy campaign, where we will inform, empower, and mobilize advocates everywhere. And we're all standing up for the right to read. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you can also find more information at ala.org, bandbooksweek.org as well. And we're going to be, again, the whole show today is dedicated to Banned Books Week. So we're going to have a few more guests on. We have a couple more minutes in this segment, Cindy Hohl, and I wanted to bring our attention back, away from schools. And my understanding in the last year is there's been a rather extraordinary uptick in bans uh, aimed at public libraries. Can you address that uptick?
Yes, well, I proudly work in a public library, and every day we open our doors to all of the beautiful people of our community. And
Thank
they
you.
come in, yes, absolutely, that's what we're here to do. And it's a privilege and an honor to serve. And so every day we open our doors and people come in to engage with the collection, to attend a program, to connect with a service provider. And a lot of patrons are accessing the internet and using computer and other technology in libraries. Libraries are bustling places, information hubs of their community, and absolutely staffed with wonderful information professionals who are trusted and who are here to serve in the best way possible. So when public libraries started receiving challenge attempts, not only for materials, but also for programs and even displays, it was really curious to follow that activity because we were starting to see people who maybe didn't even use the library on a regular basis. And you could see them coming in and taking photos, and you knew that a challenge was going to be coming, whether they chose to engage with you or not. I do recall a lady having a question about a bookmark that they found in the stacks. They were concerned that the bookmark didn't have appropriate artwork on
Oh,
it.
sheesh.
And it was just a book cover, it was a book jacket. So all we can do is listen to the feedback, engage in dialogue, hopefully having that conversation and helping people see that, if you don't like the artwork, you don't have to pick up the book. If you get into it, 10-20%, you don't like the content of the story, put the book down. There's so many beautiful books and stories out there. You don't have to read anything, but you don't have the right to tell anyone else what they can or cannot read either. So in public libraries, when we were seeing public programs being questioned and people wanting to come in and picket against that and saying this is unfair, certain celebrities should be able to have story times and not others. It's really problematic. And as a community, we should want to be strong. And so strong communities have strong libraries. And that means that we are going to stand up and defend everyone's equal right to use their library and to access information.
Cindy Hall, absolutely. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for what you do and all the librarians out there and the people that work in libraries and work around these wonderful educational institutions. I have to give a quick shout out. One of my best friends I grew up with, Blake, is a librarian. He's been a librarian for over a couple decades in Southern Washington. I know the challenges that he faces on a day-to-day basis, and I know budgetary constraints are always an issue. There's always other challenges, and yet putting the challenge of book bans on top of it all, it sometimes probably feels like a slap in the face for how much librarians give back to community. That's why I think we need to stand in solidarity together to fight against book bans, to be freed between the lines, as the theme for this year says. Last minute we have here, Cindy Hall. Can you point to some recent victory, some recent positive thing? People are fighting back. Young people are fighting back. Students are fighting back. It's very heartening to see this. Cindy Hall, can you mention something that's a victory for libraries and the right to read?
Well, absolutely. We have to keep hope, and we are encouraged every day. We're encouraged when anyone comes in and engages with a book because we're serving our purpose. We're here to help people. And so, looking at in Arkansas, the Freedom to Read, or our ALA Freedom to Read Foundation also worked with local partners in securing a preliminary injunction from the federal district court that halted the enforcement of Arkansas Act 372. And this law would have opened librarians and bookstore owners to criminal prosecution unless they removed shelves of materials that were deemed unsuitable for the youngest of minors, intended to serve older minors and adults. So it's interesting when you look at, what the original complaint was, how that challenge moves through the process. And in all of this, Mickey, it's very expensive. And these are taxpayers' dollars that we're dealing with all of the challenges, with all the removals. If a library has to take down hundreds of books and review them and go through that process, that's tax-funded money that's supporting those efforts. And we have strong collection development policies. So that is a plus. When you go to a library, go to their website if you're curious. Ask a librarian. We're here to help. Chat with us online. But in New Jersey, they also advocate for the North Hunterdon Voorhees Regional High School District. They successfully kept books on the shelf for their students to be able to read. And I know coming up next is Julia Garnett down in Tennessee, and we're so proud of her and her efforts as she advocated for student representation on book review committees. And she was honored by First Lady Dr. Jill Biden for her advocacy work. So to see our youth rise up, that's a beautiful moment in America.
Absolutely. Cindy Hall, president of the American Library Association, thank you so much for the important work you do. And thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to help us celebrate Banned Books Week at the Project Censored show this year. You're right. We do have Julia Garnett coming up, Youth Honorary Chair of Banned Books Week, as well as Jeff Trexler from the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. So we're going to continue our programming here for Banned Books Week. Special thanks to Raymond Garcia and Betsy Gomez for making our conversation possible. Cindy Hall, thank you once again for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much, Mickey. We appreciate all of the work that you do.